Imagine a studio bathed in soft, gentle light. The silence is so deep you can hear someone, somewhere in the far corner, quietly setting a glass on a table. The director raises his hand, gives the signal, and then she steps into the light. A woman whose smile for decades was stronger than any medicine. A woman America adored and the whole world recognized by silhouette alone. This is Lucille Ball. And at that very moment, when she sits down in the interview chair for the first time in many years, something in the air changes. First, a slight tremor. Then, a strange, almost painful pause. And finally, emotions that would go down in television history. She tries to smile, but the smile trembles. The familiar comedic sparkle fades from her eyes, as if someone had switched off the main spotlight inside her. People in the studio, who were used to seeing Lucy unshakable, suddenly understand something has happened, something no one had ever dared consider. The Queen of Laughter is about to bare her soul. And from her very first words, she cracks the granite wall between actress and woman. "You know," she begins softly, almost apologetically, "all my life I tried to make people laugh. Laugh, even when I myself wanted to scream." The host lowers his eyes. Camera operators stop breathing. And for the first time in decades, she cries. Quietly, almost weightlessly, but so deeply that everyone in the room feels it. They are witnessing truth being born. Today, we will tell a story not about the myth, not about the icon, not about the image printed for decades on postcards. Today, we speak of the real Lucille. The woman who, in her final interview, washed off her makeup, set aside the mask, let go of the role, and showed her soul. Are you ready to see the side of a legend that magazines, editing, and smiles used to hide? Give this video a like if you are ready for the truth behind the glamour. The place where her strength began, her childhood. August 6, 1911, the small town of Jamestown, New York. In a working-class family, a girl is born, red-haired, noisy, endlessly curious. Her name is Lucille. When she was only 3 years old, her father, the man who brought her joy, died. A loss a child cannot understand with her mind, but feels with her skin. Her mother had to work for two, taking any job she could, and they moved often. Lucille's childhood was short, anxious, but it taught her a fierce resilience, the kind needed to pursue a dream so huge it was almost frightening. While other girls played with dolls gifted lovingly by their fathers, Lucy stood before the mirror, practicing smiles. While other children laughed, Lucy studied how laughter was born. She wanted to understand, even then, what makes a smile genuine? Why do some laugh from the heart while others do it only for show? Why can laughter heal? Why can it save? The answers would come later, much later. At 15, she took a step most adults would fear. She left for New York City, with no money, no connections, no chances, according to everyone except herself. She wrote honestly in her diary, "I'm not a beauty, but I'll make sure I'm seen." By day, she worked as a model. By night, she took extra work in crowd scenes, studying movement, diction, expression. She took any job she could, each one a tiny step toward the dream. And one day, fate played a cruel but monumental joke. A failed hair dye experiment turned her hair into that iconic fiery red. She cried at first. Then she looked in the mirror, wiped her tears, and said, "Remember this face. It will teach you how to laugh." And she was right. 1951. America was slowly returning to life after the war. People craved lightness, warmth, joy. And then she appeared on screen, Lucy Ricardo. I Love Lucy exploded into the world. 25 million viewers watched her every week. Every second household in America tuned in. Every child recognized her voice. But the real story unfolded behind the scenes. Lucille became the first woman to own a major Hollywood studio. Desolate Productions would later give the world Star Trek and Mission Impossible. She insisted on multi-camera filming before a live audience, something no one had ever attempted. She changed television forever. But at what cost? She was not just an actress, she was a revolution. But behind that revolution lived a shadow. After each episode, when the studio laughter faded, Lucy would ask herself, was I myself today, or did I just play Lucy Ricardo again? That internal split became a wound she carried her whole life. But her heart held love, a love that created and destroyed. On screen, she and Desi were the perfect couple. At home, things were different. Jealousy, control, endless filming, alcohol, pressure, exhaustion. At some point, even love could no longer withstand the weight of fame. In 1960, they divorced. In public, Lucy smiled. At home, she could sit in silence for hours. Her daughter recalled, "Mom could cry without a sound. She would just stare into nothing." Pain accumulated for years. Her health worsened, but work didn't wait. The audience doesn't like silence, so she put on her smile like her finest outfit and walked out to them again. Early 1989, she agreed to a rare interview and said a phrase that silenced the entire studio, a phrase that became her final message to the world. And then, the day came when she stepped onto the stage one last time, Lucille Ball. This time without script, without role, without makeup. She sat across from the host and, for the first time in her life, wasn't playing anyone. She came to this interview as if meeting herself, truly for the first time. The host smiled. Lucy nodded. A few seconds of silence. The room froze in anticipation. The interview began. Lucy, millions remember you as the woman who always laughed. Were you truly happy? Lucy's eyes shimmered, the same way they had the first time she looked at herself in the mirror with those red curls. She answered quietly, her voice trembling. Everyone thinks I'm funny, but I just learned to laugh first. Otherwise, I would have cried too often. The host wasn't prepared. The room fell silent. It was the first time Lucy allowed herself to answer without a smile. And she continued. All these years I was acting, even at home, even when I locked myself in the bathroom. People thought I was Lucy Ricardo, but the real Lucille, she rarely laughed. Laughter was my armor. I put it on every day because I didn't know how else to survive. The room froze. Smiles turned into tear-filled eyes. Lucille continued. When I walked onto a stage, I could feel the audience waiting. Come on, make us laugh. And I did, always. Even when I was in the middle of a divorce. Even when my heart was cracking. Even when my father died. Even when I lost a child. I made people laugh. I didn't allow myself grief. She wiped her tears. The silence tightened its grip. The legend of American television, the symbol of optimism, revealed the truth. Behind her mask lived pain. Lucille broke the silence with a faint, hollow sound. Desi. He was fire. We burned together. He was passion, music, pain. We didn't know how to be happy, but we knew how to make others happy. We built an empire out of laughter and destroyed it with our own hands. She fell silent again. The host nodded, his eyes red. Someone in the audience quietly sobbed. It was a moment of truth, where comedy turned into tragedy, and behind the legend appeared a woman, fragile, loving, needing love in return. Lucy looked toward the audience as if through a lens, straight into the viewer's eyes. I always feared the day the audience would stop laughing. Then I realized worse is being remembered only as a role, a clown. Clowns aren't allowed to cry. I was a woman, a mother, an actress, but people saw only red hair and funny faces. They didn't know that sometimes I went home unable to take the smile off. My face would ache from it, physically. If I could go back, I'd allow myself to be me more often, without jokes, without roles, without fear. The host wiped his tears. Lucy, if everyone you ever made laugh were listening to you right now, what would you tell them? I'd say, thank you for laughing with me, and forgive me for hiding my tears. I thought you wouldn't be able to bear them, but it turns out that's what made me real. If even one person felt joy because of me, even in a moment when I myself was hurting, then I didn't live in vain. The phrase was spoken live. The studio rose in a standing ovation, but Lucy didn't smile. She simply looked aside, as if seeing those who were gone. Desi, her parents, her younger self, the girl who dreamed of becoming an actress in New York. The world didn't hear a comedic star that day. The world heard a human being, unafraid to leave honestly. When the cameras turned off, a dead silence filled the studio. The host later admitted, I couldn't speak. I just sat there, unable to believe that this was the Lucy I thought I knew. The assistant holding the microphone said, she hugged me and whispered, don't cry, sweetheart. I finally told the truth. A week later, the interview aired. Thousands of letters arrived, gratitude, memories, confessions. People wrote, we grew up with your laughter. Now we're learning from your tears. Lucille said, all I ever wanted was for people to feel a little happier than before they turned on the TV. It was her last broadcast, the last time thousands saw her live, unaware that silence lay ahead. The last evening when her voice was so sincere that even the cameras seemed to listen. 3 weeks later, Lucille Ball was gone. But that interview lived on, not as a farewell, not as sorrow, but as a revelation. Behind every laugh, there is a person, and sometimes the strongest are those who know how to cry. A few days after the interview, Lucille felt sharp chest pains. For a woman who had worked through pain even when doctors forbade it, this was alarming. Her family convinced her to go to the hospital. She rode in silence, looking out the car window, as if repeating to herself, just a little more, just a little more. But fate decided otherwise. On April 26, 1989, her heart stopped. Quietly, without words, without cameras. Her final recorded words, whispered to a nurse, were extraordinarily warm. Tell them, I'm grateful for everything. A simple phrase, yet it held her entire essence, sincere, human, humble. When news broke, American TV channels interrupted their broadcasts. Anchors barely held their voices. And almost simultaneously, as if someone commanded it, reruns of I Love Lucy aired. Millions turned on their televisions, but their laughter was different this time. Bittersweet, warm, like a farewell. Americans said, we watched Lucy as if she were still alive, and she truly was, on the screen, in our memories, in our hearts. Her show was called Eternal, and perhaps it truly is. Laughter given with love does not disappear. It continues to live in those who once heard it. Lucille Ball didn't just change television, she changed the very idea of what a woman in the industry could be. Before her, Hollywood's doors for women were narrow. After her, open. She proved a woman could be beautiful and intelligent, funny and powerful, feminine and fearless. She became the first female head of a major studio. Desilu Productions became home to cultural pillars, Star Trek, Mission Impossible, and many others. But her greatest legacy was not rules or formulas, it was principles. Make laughter human. Don't fear vulnerability. Never hide your truth. And even when falling, keep your grace. She said, "I'm no genius. I just worked harder than the rest and laughed louder than the rules allowed." Generations after her saw Lucy as a symbol, not of fame, but of humanity. Her photos hang in acting classrooms, her interviews are studied, and on her birthday, thousands visit Jamestown. They bring flowers, leave notes, write her favorite words on the walls. "If I made you laugh, I didn't live in vain." Young actresses whisper her lines before premieres. Viewers re-watch I Love Lucy and realize, behind every joke lies a heart that wanted life to be easier for others. Perhaps this is the true purpose of art. Not perfection, not fame, but the chance to make another life even a little brighter. She laughed first, so we could laugh with her, and she cried last, so we could understand the price of that laughter. Lucille Ball is gone, but her laughter remains. It echoes every time someone watches an old episode, hears her voice, remembers her lines, or smiles for no reason. Every time someone says, "I love Lucy," the world remembers a woman who gave joy to millions and bravely revealed her pain. If this story touched you, like, subscribe, and share in the comments which Lucille Ball role speaks to you the most. Laughter can heal, and memory can extend life.